Hello and welcome to International Affairs, broadcasting live from the SATV's Gulshan studio. Of course, there are many updates that I want to share. Without further ado, let me introduce all my panelists here. In the studio, we have Professor Abdullah Al Mamoun. I welcome you back onto the program. I'm happy to see you once again during this festive time.
Happy to join as well.
Thank you for being here, sir. Alongside, we will have Washington, D.C., District of Columbia. We have Norman Floyd Barnes joining us from Washington. And there are many updates that I want to begin with. First of all, Ali Larijani, who is the Iranian politician, military officer, and a philosopher who has served as the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. I'm talking about Iran. He has been assassinated as of yesterday. And this morning, Iranian news outlets have confirmed the manner. More on towards this. However, in the United States, we have another U.S. counterterrorism official, Joe Kent, resigning from his position, stating that it was a wrong move to attack Iran as they did not mean any immediate threat. I want to begin with Norman Floyd Barnes. What is your observations? There are some huge updates coming on day 19.
Yes, greetings from Washington this morning. Yes, as you stated, we have some great news, but big news regarding the war. The situation, the U.S. has decided to drop some 500 pounds bombs on the coast of Iran as a missile sites. As a result, of course, Iran responded by attacking more sites in Israel and the UAE and the Gulf states. So this back and forth battle goes on. At the same time, there's like I said, the assassination of the high-ranking official in Iran is causing concern, but the regime appears to be intact moving forward. But because of his knowledge, his skills, and his time, it has to have an effect on the leadership. But we move on. Here in the United States, Joe Kent, the counterterrorism official, put in his resignation stating that he's unable to follow the Trump administration mission and plan regarding the war. He feels that it's something that we should not be involved in. There is no imminent threat to the United States, and he feels that it's something that we was coaxed in, we was impacted and basically influenced by Israel to get involved in this. So that has caused a lot of controversy, a lot of conversations amongst the lawmakers and the people here in the States. Even though this gentleman has some background himself, it appears that he has agreement with his people, who even the Democrats who wanted him not to be appointed, that this war is something that we have to question, and we still can't figure out why we're in it. And the support issue is now coming up as the United States and the people, we are struggling, trying to figure out exactly what's going on. The prices of everything is rising, the gasoline, the airports. The airports had another big issue is that the airports is having a real problem in the United States, the infrastructure. The TSA and employees, the federal employees that we employ, are now leaving the jobs because they have not been paid, and they can't afford it, and a lot of people are quitting. And the lines, like we're looking at in Atlanta yesterday, it was like 3 hours long just to get into the areas. So this is going to cause a problem into the transportation infrastructure as we get into the holiday season, Easter coming up. The issue of transportation and moving around is going to be a question. Some officials have stated that some of the airports will have to close the smaller ones because they don't have staff to deal with this. So this is something that will probably be brought hopefully to the president's table, and he will be able to make some adjustments to avoid this problem that we're going to have, this movement of transportation problem, in addition to
Right.
everything else going on. So that's what's happening right now in Washington, D.C. We had an election in Illinois yesterday, and the Democrat, part of the upcoming uh, midterms,
Right.
the Democratic Party had the lieutenant governor has won the nomination for the primary. So we have the politics, we have the economic issues going on, and we have a war which many people including myself, still can't understand why.
Right. Important updates from Norman Floyd Barnes. I imagine it must be a very tough time worldwide, not only in the United States. Of course, Joe Kent was the National Counterterrorism Center director. From that position, he had mentioned on a letter posted on the X handle stating that this war started due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. And at this moment, after Ali Larijani, we can expect foreign ministers to be targeted as well. Abbas Araghchi, who has been the mouthpiece for the Iranian regime, or how they have been handling almost 19 days of war. Back into the studio with Professor Abdullah Al Mamun. You were hearing Norman, you have heard me as well. How are you observing this?
You see, this is a very old school thought to kill the top leaders, including the military
Yes.
leaders at the time of the
Yes.
war. This is a very old school thought. Perhaps Israel and USA forgot that Iran was preparing for this war for last 20 to 25 years. So I don't believe that they didn't only prepare the second, third, fourth layer or level of leadership. Rather, there will be much more down the road, maybe 10th, 8th, 18, 20 level leadership. You can't really stop Iranians just by killing their top leaders, which I said,
Right.
the very old school thought, number one. Number two, in the era of AI, in the era of satellite war, you see, these of course, these are the decision maker. They're very important people in the warfare.
Right.
But you have to remember that this war is not only run by the politicians themselves, it is their decision collectively. So if I take it hypothetically, the decision has been made by, of course, they ought to make that decision being created by US and Israel. But when the decision has been made, of course, the decision is there from the top leadership, but the warfare is not at all controlled by them and not the top leadership. The decision is we are on yard and we don't like to surrender. We like to see how long this war could prolong, and this is the chessboard they have, kind of chessboard plan they have prepared that, okay, the issue is let us prolong this war, and the outcome is very much well narrated by Norman Floyd from USA, what is happening there, including the very interesting story he came up with, the Easter break and the situation there. This is the chessboard Iranian has planned, and America is now suffering in that chessboard very badly. Secondly, truly speaking, Trump and the American, including the Israelis, they are in a complete mess. They now don't know what is their third, fourth, fifth strategy. And Norman, whether you'll be in my side or not, whether you'll compliment when I finish, that they're in complete mess. And what they're doing, killing top leaders, destroying 12,000 buildings or killing civilians, truly speaking, they are yet to achieve anything from the war. This is my conclusion in my first section of discussion.
Right.
You see, secondly, having said so, the consequences of the war, the way Iran is wanting, it is increasing. Of course, Iran is receptive of heavy bombarding, what Norman has said, even 500-pound bomb. But if you look at overall scenario of the war, and particularly the neighboring states, who were heavily dependent on American security arrangement, that has now been questioned. And the biggest issue for Trump is, of course, the war, but it's a shame on him that European Union had utterly rejected his request to involve in the war, even being highly paid by the Hormuz Canal. So this is another story. The third thing I like to highlight, if you see, this war, of course, is not now limited to Israel, Iran, and USA.
Right.
But if you look at the whole scenario of the world, which Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu never even imagined, that gradually not only 12, 13, 15 countries of the Gulf area or USA or Iran, but now the whole world has been affected by this war. And if you ask a sensible citizen, except a few from the Jewish community or very extremist supporter of the Trump, everybody would say, as Joe Scott has said, there's no issue to attack Iran except a war which Israel was wanting and USA just responded and fall into a trap. So this is my
Right.
fourth point. Hopefully we'll discuss more. You
No,
like
no,
to-
of course. That was an excellent point-making gesture. All of these statements do have a lot of relevance in the last 19 days. I would also extend this towards Norman Floyd Barnes. We were discussing here in the studio, and as I'm sure you are hearing, you often title this a hot mess. Sir in the studio has used the word complete mess. So I want to understand what is the future of this, especially we see that the many layers of Iranian leadership, even after having them decapitated, but there's still leadership happening. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. NATO has now stepped in, and the US seems to lose more than it's
European
to
Union
gain.
has stepped out almost.
The EU has stepped out as well. I want to understand from Norman, what is, how are you feeling about this? How do you see this?
Well, my analysis is that this hot mess, extreme mess, is going to becoming a situation where it's affecting how the world is going to move forward. We are in the process of a major shift in terms of how we relate, how we do business, how the war is just a transitional instrument, a tool to make this change. Uh, Change is already happening as we speak. Today is different from yesterday. We're not going to go back to anything. So the notion of going back to a peaceful or the same old stuff is no longer applicable. It can't not happen. We have started the process, and people are now have to make these adjustments. We're looking at situations that we were vulnerable in. You're seeing it now because of the process and how it's affecting the world order. So the world order has to now recognize this is a problem, and they have to make adjustments to move forward. Alternatives have to be made, different routes, different communications, different relationships, different terms have to be looked at, and then even the point of currency. What type of currency we're going to utilize now? We have to look at that. What makes the world move? We have to understand the concept, because this war is just an indicator of a problem that we've been having over the last several decades. The transition, how we move forward. So now we're seeing the results of this issue that hasn't been addressed. It's just been played with and allowed and tolerated. Now we're into a conflict now where now the terms has changed. And even if both parties, all parties say, hey, let's stop and go to a ceasefire, the world has shifted. You can't go back. It's no going back. It's how we move forward. So the conversation should be about how do we coexist? How do we move forward? How do we recover from this? How do we get over after we decide not to stop killing ourselves? How do we coexist and how do we make better business, better
Right.
opportunities? So everybody has to understand that you can't go back. You started something, the Pandora's box open, and now we have to figure out how we're going to move forward. Because if we don't, we're going to go back to the same problem. It's going to be worse, and we're going to have a global issue. So everybody's saying that we're vulnerable.
Of
Even though
course.
say, hey, I'm not involved in an area, I'm not in a region, but you are because your resources, the cost of doing things, the business, everything is affected on this critical infrastructure issue because it
Right.
hasn't been addressed on a global scale. So everybody's involved in this now. So it's no, it's them or they or over there.
Right.
No, it affects you directly.
It definitely has some kind of domino effect all over the world. Very important updates from both gentlemen here in the studio and across Zoom. I want to take a very short break, but after the break, we'll discuss what else is happening in the sidelines of.
Simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV and SATV Digital. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsulam Pantha.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
opening an open war conflict with them.
Testing nuclear missiles.
Russia's announcement of these supposedly successful testing.
Special and exclusive footage that is being played on SATV's screen.
Really coming to terms with Hamas.
Damage estimated between this entire issue.
President Trump is expected to hold bilateral talks.
Preserving biodiversity and tackling climate change.
We cannot protect the planet before we negotiate peace.
Where is it going? Is it understanding the needs of its people before the needs of this global world?
For China to come to agreement,
they will face better projects.
With President Xi of China and President Lee of South Korea.
Trump's White House that is in favor of these things.
simply not enough action being taken to address the problem of fossil fuels.
What their plan initially is towards the Caribbean, a place that has been met with two types of disasters.
Bangladeshi students at the same level of opportunity internationally and domestically.
International Affairs. Watch every Sunday to Thursday at 2 p.m. only on SATV and SATV Digital. Hello and welcome to International Affairs, and my name is Shamsulam Pantha.
I don't see an easy resolution to this because every slight deviation from the plan,
Opening an open war conflict with them.
Testing nuclear missiles.
Russia's announcement.
I am joined by Professor Abdullah Al-Mamoon as well as Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C. I want to take out a theme that Norman ended with before the break. We were discussing about how to move on, how to coexist with the amount of news that we're gathering here in the last 19 days. Of course, there is an issue I want to raise with Professor Abdullah Al-Mamoon in the studio based on that fact, the vulnerability issue of some organizations, I believe.
Particularly the United Nations.
Right. You'd be better to talk about
it. It is so unfortunate in this 19 days war saga. I've never heard, I've just found some statement perhaps, but it's so unfortunate that the organization was created with the dream, aims and objectives, whatever you say, to have peace in the world, to have the right share of the whole world cake for everybody, regardless of religion, ethnicity, state and entity. That is the United Nations. And unfortunately, in this war, United Nations even failed to act 1% or 2% even. And most importantly, there are so many statements coming, so many voices we're hearing, but even the voice of the United Nations has been fainted so much that the existence of this institution or this organization would be in serious question moving forward. Why I'm saying moving forward, where Norman ended, in this moving forward world, which Norman imagining, or myself as well, United Nations has to play a very catalytic role.
Right.
And if this and with this silence, Norman, I also like to ask you whether do you believe that this would be the right kind of platform for the people to trust, or even for them to act, to take that world which we both imagine to moving forward? This is my question to you and Norman as well. But my answer is perhaps not. It would be the bilateral or trilateral, unilateral platforms who could act and take the world forward. Three things on this background I would like to highlight. First, I think this 19 days war has given a message, particularly to US-Israel alliance, that the way they want to act Iran would not act on that, including their supply chains such as China and Russia.
Right.
This is number one. Secondly, to moving forward, this is a precondition, I believe, that Trump has to have a winning statement. And unfortunately, now the onus is on Trump, not even on Israel or even Iran. The story has to be a winning story, has to be created by Trump himself, and then only he can step out from this war. If not, he wants his people in his soil suffer cruelly. Thirdly, I think this is very important, that the way Trump wanted the international community to behave, except Israel, I think US diplomacy, Norman, please compliment, has failed miserably. And it has become a homesickle and serious questionable international diplomacy by United Nations. And perhaps in the last many wars or battles or incidents, I have never seen United States so much vulnerable internationally and so much rejected by international communities, and particularly by his very trusted ally, European Union. This is a ridiculous experience for me, but this should be a lesson for United States and of course, particularly the President Trump. The third point, I think very important, that I would like to have a calculation, if I could, that after the bombarding of Israel and USA, now we know that destruction of buildings has increased to more than 13,000. And almost 3,000 people have sacrificed their life. Many have been injured. But I like to have a calculation, or maybe it would be interesting to have economic modeling, that the amount of war expenditure of Israel and Israel and US perhaps would be higher than the destruction they have made in Iran. The US and Israel should learn from this lesson as well, moving forward in future, the way they would like to see the Gulf, and particularly whole Arab region. I don't think it has already become a nightmare for them, that they will give a big lesson to Iran and they would act as they want in the Middle East. Norman, please reflect on this, as I have put almost 3-4 questions for you, even not the moderator.
I want to pass it to Norman. As you were hearing Professor Abdullah Al-Mamun in the studio, silence of the United Nations, very important. There was a pattern I want to mention as well. The US leaving UNESCO, a cultural semi-organization of the United States, United Nations. So that is just one example, just the move away, as well as we hearing things such as the United Nations having a huge financial crisis. They have enough to run until mid-July, as far as some of the media outlets is saying. So all of these points combined from the discussion in the studio, what is some of the feelings, vibes you are getting from us? How would you explain some of these things? US is in a vulnerable situation, and of course, not all of the things that US President Donald Trump does, he does often bypass congressional approval. All of these things are important for us to understand.
And also, I would particularly like to have your reflection on my argument that US vulnerability support from the ally.
From the EU.
Yes. This is a big situation, and a pattern has been developed. Just mentioning the World Health Organization was notified today by Argentina that Argentina is now requesting to leave that, just like the United States. So these organizations, the United Nations and whatever, who basically have been silent, suspiciously silent regarding this situation, the world is in conflict. and we need to figure out a way to move forward in regards. Like I mentioned before, we're not going back. There's no reset, there's no fixing, there's no glue, there's no tape to put this back together. We have to figure out what's going on, how we move forward. We notice we have the situation with Gaza has not been resolved. It had expanded. Now we got over 100, more than almost 200,000 people been displaced because of what's going on in Lebanon. So now we got women, children, people sick, and this thing now with Iran. We're looking at putting troops in there. We're looking at attacking. We're destroying infrastructures. Infrastructures are being destroyed, which has to be rebuilt at some point in time. This stuff has to be built. And at what cost? Do we have the money? Do we have the means? How are we going to do this thing? Because the world has to move on regardless of how we feel about our neighbor. We are moving on. The world is moving on. The world is not stopping because you have a difference with your neighbor next door, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, it doesn't matter, Venezuela, Cuba. It's all the same. We're dealing with the same situation. We have an issue with the human. We have to learn to relate to people and understand. We need each other. Energy is the issue. We don't have the ability to produce everything else. So we may think we do, but we don't. We are interdependent on each other. So if we don't address these issues, these flare-ups will continue. It's like putting water on the forest fire, a cup of water. It's going to flare up somewhere else until you address the core problem. The core problem is that we have an issue with dealing with each other and how we want to relate. Some countries, some groups want to believe that they can dominate and control everything. And as we see, even with the result, the great and mighty nation of the United States and its allies can't conquer this. This is something that we're going to have to deal with. It's going to eat at our soul until we address it. We can destroy this, we can build this, we can put this up, but if opens up another problem somewhere else in the world, which we have to address. So the issue is, hey, we need to stop and say, what are we doing? Where do we want to go? And everybody need to have a part in that. There's issues with energy in the Middle East. We need that oil, we need the energy, we need the stuff, we need the food and everything that goes on. If we don't address this issue, bombs, there's not enough bombs, there's not enough military, there's not enough army, and there's definitely not enough governments to contain this thing. This is larger than any government we have, including the big three, China, Russia, United States. It's bigger than that. So they're basically trying to control this, but we have to stop and talk about where we want to be and how we want to get there and how everybody can participate in the process. War is unnecessary in this situation. It's unnecessary. It does nothing. All it does is destroys something that we have to rebuild, and you still have to talk about how we're going to do it, and you still need active participation, even in the people that we believe that we are defeating and controlling or conquering or moving forward, the victory. The victory is no peace. We have no peace right now until we come together and deal with people.
Of course, I want to thank both my guests joining on the program today. Of course, many thanks to Norman Floyd Barnes, who has joined us from Washington, District of Columbia. Very important arguments from him, as well as Professor Abdullah Al Mamoon, who has graced us in the studio. Very important debates coming from your end. I must thank you as well for joining on today's program. Before ending, let me remind our viewers, today is March the 18th, is also celebrated annually as Global Recycling Day, promoting global recycling, encouraging a circular economy, and recognizing the importance of recycling for a sustainable future. With that being said, this is Shamsul Alam Pantho, and I'm signing out on International Affairs.